things. But what, from your perspective, are some specific things that industry can do to help out? Lightning round. Start with you, Nick.
Oh.
I have 5.
You want to go first?
I
You
have
five?
5.
You ready?
Oh, 5.
I have 5. Well, we already talked about AI and ML, right? The right kind of tools to do the analytics, depending on the environment or the domain that you're working in. But I think intelligent tutoring, for me, as the training PEO, I think is key. Human performance and training effectiveness. How do we increase the training performance for our soldiers? How do we give them a better experience so that they are trained at potentially a higher rate? Immersive multisensory simulation and training. We've got IVAS program that's being developed, but IVAS is only going to go to a certain sector of the Army. I'm responsible for all the live training, the individual soldier virtual training, and so being able to look at technology for the masses, so low price, but or a reasonable price, excuse me, not low price, but a reasonable price that we can provide to the entire to the rest of the Army. Embedded training on ground platforms or air platforms, that is key, and we were talking about potentially having a card, but what if a soldier could go and sit in his ground platform in the motor pool and be connected, wirelessly connected to the SIM system, to the STI that's located in the cloud or located at your local MTC. So looking at that. And then lastly is terrain. General Gervais talked about One World Terrain, and it is a program of record within my portfolio providing terrain to the simulation systems. We've seen it very successfully used in the operational force, but what I think a lot of us miss is the amount of detail. When you produce terrain in a certain standard, the detail that goes into massaging that terrain so that it is consumable by a simulation system. And so you've got to attribute every piece of that visual terrain so the simulation system can reason on it. You have to know the insides of buildings. You have to know the dimensions of buildings. That is a huge piece that I'm very interested. We have a program of record. Actually, it's now been divested, but 57 different formats depending on which system the terrain was going to go to. One World Terrain has the propensity just to essentially have one standard. It is a 3D standard, but taking it that extra mile to be able to be rendered and used within a simulation system, I think is key. And it may sound simple, but it's a difficult issue, especially when you're doing it dynamically. Those are mine.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'll hop back. I don't have 5, I have 2.
Okay.
So one, just a quick pet peeve story. So I get really frustrated at work with how poorly sometimes our conference rooms are integrated for audio video, and just it's clunky. So like you sit in a meeting, it's like it should be easier than this, right? That it should just work. And we recently had them upgraded 6 months ago or so to be integrated with Teams, so that Teams would control the camera and the speakers. You wouldn't have to bring in an external speaker or a webcam or whatever, right? Still clunky. So I think the problem was when we approached that upgrade, is we went to the vendor and said, hopefully they're not in the room, I don't think they are, but we went to it's not their fault, it's our fault anyway. So I think we went to the vendor and said, here's what we have, make it work with Microsoft Teams, versus saying, here's our conference room, make it work with Microsoft Teams, because there are probably a bunch of other solutions versus what we had in there that could have, that just are more native or whatever, right? I say Teams because that's what we're using on the enterprise side. So all that's to say, sometimes we might come ask you questions about, hey, here's our requirement, or here's what we're trying to do. Give us some feedback too and say, hey, you asked us this, but I'm going to open the aperture for you a little bit and give you this other perspective of what else is kind of within the realm of possible, or what we think you're trying to get after this. Here's another way you could do it, which you weren't asking us about. So we're looking to see, as we kind of continue on our Cape Set modernization, we're laying that groundwork and we're making incremental improvements to the network, but we're also looking for, what are some of those big bets that we can capitalize on that are going to be ready and for Cape Set 25 or Cape Set 27 that are really going to move the needle. So we're going to keep the modernization of the network, but where can we inject those big bets? And some of those might come from conversations like, hey, you asked us about that, but we think you really would be interested in this. So that's one. So be open with us and creative with us, and we appreciate that, even if we can't do something right away, but it gets the wheels turning. And the second one is to please just keep being persistent. So we're a couple years into our Cape Set process, kind of how we designed. Part of the reason we designed it the way we did was to have those every couple of years iterations to allow new technologies, new capabilities to insert into the network when they were ready. And also one thing we're trying to do throughout that whole process is keep it open and to keep opening up competition too. So we ask you guys just to keep at it. If you didn't win the last one, you might win the next one. But keep pushing to see what's within the realm of possible with Army network modernization, and please just stay persistent.
I'll jump in. So I have a few. First, I would encourage industry to get those requirements I talked about when they're available, early as possible, and understand them as much as possible. We put draft solicitations, draft PPONs, draft RFPs on the street. We do RFIs and other market research, and we do that to help you let us or inform our performance work statements, our solicitations when they become final. So that's the whole idea, is to understand really what is out there in industry. So I encourage you to get those requirements when they hit the street, understand them, then help us shape those solicitations that are going to compete those requirements. The second thing is, and as we move towards really by default doing agile development, agile software, DevSecOps, we really have to see ourselves better. And I'm learning some best practices, but I ask industry, how do you measure yourself against the baseline when you're developing software? Share those with us. We should be looking, the government and industry, at the same metrics every week and seeing how we're doing against those. If you have a different set of metrics than us, maybe yours are better. Share them. How are you seeing yourselves? How are you measuring yourselves against the contract, against the baseline? And then finally, when I got on board, I really got sticker shock with what we spend on licenses. So what's the right cost model for us? Help us out, right? Based on our needs for our licenses, bring us a good cost model, knowing how many users we're going to have, what capabilities they're going to need. Bring us one that doesn't break the bank, right? And so we're doing a lot of negotiations early on in anticipation of licenses down the road, but as we do those, bring a really good cost model to us so it's affordable for the Army.
I guess I'm last before beer time. Is that it? So
That's it. You're the only thing standing between us and refreshments.
Yeah. So I will only say that Ross said it better than I could. The only thing that surprised me in this job is how often industry just didn't ask a question when they had a question. And so every other Tuesday I meet with industry. My door is always open. If there are things that you see in a solicitation, either a draft RFP, an RFI, come talk to the PEO. Ask questions, because we want industry's feedback to make that solicitation better so that it's a more competitive environment and we're getting the better capability. And so thanks for shortening that up there. Appreciate that.